This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
There he is, and he is back. Welcome back, my friend. How are you doing, Mr. Pianowski? We are back together.
Yeah, great to be back. Reunited feels so good. NFL's ahead. Next 4 months is what we're going to be doing: grinding, waivers, trades, pickups, start sit decisions. Hopefully, a playoff berth and a championship down the road. Look. I love all sports, but the NFL is the king of the American sports landscape. So it's basically like Christmas all week.
Yeah, and listen, we've done this in the past with you, me, and Andy, and we do twice a week, which is something that people normally don't do. Now we're even switching it up. Now we're doing it year round with our Sports Grill Fantasy Football Zone. So now we'll take people all the way through, even their daily leagues during the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and then keeper and dynasty leagues. Now this is the show for you because we're going to carry you through the off season with free agency and the draft, and then all the mini camps, and sadly the injuries that happen and how it changes the fantasy landscape, and then we get right back in the training camp and the preseason, and we're back again. So we're taking it to another level now, Scott. So it's pretty cool. This is a cool way of doing it now. This is the hardcore way of doing it year round now.
Yeah, the NFL is a 12-month calendar. It's there's no days off. Free agency, the combine, the draft is gigantic. And this year especially, there are challenges because so many players have changed teams, right? Tyreek Hill's on the Dolphins, and Devontae Adams is on the Raiders, and Russell Wilson's on the Broncos. And there's been a lot of movement, obviously a lot of player movement, a lot of coaching movement. We just saw the Dolphins head coach talking for a while. The sun's in its half-life, by the way. I'm not sure if you knew that. But
yeah.
So the NFL I say it's a snow globe league because you shake things up. There are teams. I mean, Tennessee was the number one seed in the AFC last year. I have them missing the playoffs. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
The Colts are the favorite in that division, but that's the way the NFL works. The Rams won the Super Bowl. The Rams looked like a pretty disorganized football team last night. That's the NFL. Would you be at all surprised if the Rams were a 9-8 team or a 10-7 team? Maybe last night was more about Buffalo being good. Let's be fair about that. The Bills are a heck of a football team. But the NFL, there's going to be just craziness. If you were to leave the country for a month and come back, I'd be like, oh wow, these like 5 marquee guys are hurt. These 3 teams look terrible. These like really bad teams are all undefeated. And that's why we love it, because it's the most unpredictable of sports. It's not like some other sports where the Dodgers are good again. Okay, I love baseball, but the same teams I feel like win in baseball.
Yeah.
In football, anybody can win. Why can't the Carolina Panthers go to the playoffs? Or why can't I don't know, maybe the Jaguars are competitive this year. The Lions are getting a little bit of steam, in part because they were on Hard Knocks, and Campbell is an interesting quote. But the NFL has like the best model because everybody can compete, anybody can be good, anybody can be bad. It doesn't matter how big your city is. There's no real financial advantages from team to team, and that makes the game very compelling.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And folks, if you have questions, post them right now on our YouTube chat board. I will scroll and try to find the questions for you. You need to rack those things up right now. You can also send it in on our text line at 855-912-1056. I'm going to pull that up here because that's a lot easier to read and find on the text line at 855-912-1056. And also on my Twitter page at Big O Show, you can also send it. And of course, you see it there. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski. That's what I and many other fantasy players do. First of all, let me talk a little Dolphins fantasy. What is reality in your eyes for fantasy? Because obviously, in your hometowns, whether it's Chicago or Miami or New York or Los Angeles, people are going to be biased about their own players. So we know lots of drafts in South Florida probably have a little biased Dolphins slant. So from an outsider's point of view, who do you really like in fantasy? Who are starters out of the Dolphins lineup in your eyes?
When you mix potential return with what the ADP was, what the draft cost was, the Dolphins player I have the most of is Chase Edmonds. They prioritized him in free agency. They gave him a big contract. They gave him a contract very early in free agency. There's other talented backs here. Raheem Mostert's a good player, but I think they paid Edmonds to be a primary guy. He was more efficient than James Conner last year. Conner had the great fantasy year because he scored all the touchdowns, but I mean, he averaged something like 3.6 yards a carry. He didn't really have a great season. He just was falling in from the 2-yard line. I'd like to see Edmonds stay healthy, of course. I mean, running back's a huge position with injuries, but he's the player I drafted into the most. And you guys know this. I don't need to. I feel like anytime I talk about the Dolphins on this show, you guys are going to know this stuff as well as I do, probably better. But this is the year we're going to get a referendum on Tua. They added Tyreek Hill. He's a field stretcher. They have year 2 of Jalen Waddle. They beefed up the running back room. It's a new coaching staff. It's an exciting. I was a Flores guy, but I like the new coaching staff too. It's an exciting offense. The 49ers offense comes in. So if Tua is a long-term answer here, we're going to find out. And if he's not, and if they need to reboot, we're going to find that out too. And the great thing about Tyreek Hill is that he's just, and again, you guys know all this, but I'll say it anyway. Even when he's not catching passes, he scares the pants off the defense because we saw this with Randy Moss when he was a rookie, where the defensive shift in the NFL became, okay, we can't allow an 80-yard touchdown in every play because Randy Moss will do that to us.
Right.
Tyreek Hill's that kind of guy. We saw teams start to change how they defended the Chiefs last year. They started going in that 2-deep shell because they were petrified Tyreek Hill was going to run behind them.
Have you ever watched him practice?
I haven't.
Well, that's the first thing I was able to do this year, right? To watch him practice. He's impossible to cover.
You can't cover him.
There is no way any one human being can cover that guy. The only guy I can think of is maybe Dion that might be able to stay with him. But outside of that, I don't remember a corner. There's no such thing. That's why you're going to have to bracket him every time. And if you do that, then, Waddle and all these other guys are going to be alone, and that's going to be a field day. Hell, Waddle had nobody last year, and you still couldn't stop him from catching 100 balls. Can you imagine now with Tyreek on the field? And Scott, it is a thing to marvel. The second he plants his foot, and remember, he cuts at high rates of speed.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us human beings, we've got to slow down a little bit and make a cut, that kind of. No, dude, this guy's cutting on dimes at high rates of speed. And the second he cuts, he has 3-4 yards of separation already because when he cuts the DB, it takes him so long to react that there is separation already because he has exploded into another direction. It is impressive watching Tyreek Hill.
It's a great observation. A lot of times when we think of the guys who hit the home runs, the guys who have the really high yards per catch, a lot of those guys are just running 9 routes. They're running straight down the field. And we don't think of them as route runners. But you make a great point. I mean, Hill moves so well laterally, and he can kill you on drag routes. And again, because they're so petrified of getting beat over the top,
right?
He gives you those 4 or 5 hard steps like he's going deep, goes over the middle, and then he's wide open. And then you have a catch and run situation. You can make a chunk play that way. He runs a very diverse route tree. He's not just a one-trick pony. Like you think of Valdez-Scantling went to Kansas City. They're trying to replace Tyreek with a collection of guys. They're going to ask him to run deep routes. They're not going to ask him to run the whole route tree. But Tyreek Hill runs the whole route tree, and as you said, there's no right way to cover him. And that means Jalen Waddle is going to be open for a lot of football games. Waddle caught 106, I think it was last year. I see no reason why he won't be over 100 again. And he's certainly approved for fantasy. I don't have as much Waddle as I'd like to because other people get the draft too. A lot of sophomore receivers are really interesting targets this year. Rashard Bateman in Baltimore, Elijah Moore in New York. But, I mean, Jalen Waddle's already done it. With Bateman, that's on spec. With Moore, that's on spec. Some of these other guys. Jalen Waddle just caught 106 passes, and now they have a more threatening offense. Yeah, it's wheels up for me. In fact, I also think Miami's a great bet this week. You want to play the Patriots early?
Yeah.
New England had a lot of problems this summer. Look, Bill Belichick's a great coach. Will he figure it out? I think so. Will he figure it out in week 1? I don't think so. Who's running this offense? Is it Matt Patricia? Is it Joe Judge? Who's there? They don't really have a number 1 receiver. They have a lot of good 2 and 3s. Devontae Parker, as you guys know, he's a solid player. Jacoby Myers, solid player. Kendrick Bourne's a solid player. There's no lead singer. There's no Tyreek Hill on that offense. There's no Jalen Waddle on this offense. I think they're getting a break drawing the Patriots right now. We know New England has not traditionally played well in the Miami stop on their schedule. I think Miami's and look, it's a new coaching staff with Miami. There's a lot of change there. So with teams backing off preseason, you don't know. Some of these games will be a little bit sloppy this week. They might look almost like preseason or exhibition games because teams don't take those seriously anymore. But I think Miami got a break drawing the Patriots now. I would want to play this team before they start figuring out what's wrong with them. Belichick is a great MacGyver. He'll fix it. He'll put scotch tape and glue and chicken wire on things. But I don't think they can fix it in time for week 1.
And it's funny you said that that with Tyreek gone, they're going to use several players to replace him. That's exactly what I've been saying about the Dolphin offense. Because, we had a lot of these crazy Dolphin fans that were like, oh, no, we need to go also after Deebo Samuel. And I was like, did you watch the offseason? They got Deebo Samuel. They did. Alec Ingold will play Deebo Samuel, and so will Chase, and so will Raheem Mostert, and so will Tyreek, and so will Waddle, and so will Cedric Wilson. Everybody is going to play the Deebo Samuel role. The thing is, instead of wearing out one guy, it'll be different guys that'll play the different roles. That running part, well, maybe Azukama does a little bit of that. The big kid from K-State that has looked, really, really good. Maybe Ingold will do some of that inside running. The bubble screen stuff, well, that'll be Waddle and Tyreek. What they did with Deebo, it's actually ridiculous to give him that money because you're going to only get injured playing that way. But this way is actually the better way, where now the load isn't on one guy. Now it's 6, 7 different guys. And that's what I saw in the way they constructed this team. Deebo will be here. His spirit will be here, but it'll be spilled out over several players. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, in fantasy, we call that spread the risk, right? Having all your eggs in one basket. And some of these guys, we have to accept there'll be a gap. A player like Cedric Wilson will be a lot more valuable in real life than he will be in fantasy. He may not put up the fantasy numbers that make him viable in our game, but man, he made a lot of splash plays for the Cowboys. I thought he was a really good ad. And again, what are you asking him to do? You're asking him to be the third, the fourth, the fifth piece of an offense. And you can't look. It doesn't make sense to pay once you bring in Hill, and you have Waddle. He'll eventually want a second contract. You're going to have to deal with Tua's contract and all that. It just doesn't make sense. You can't have your roster structured where you pay 3 or 4 guys and then you scraps the rest of your roster. So I thought it made perfect sense the way they did it. And also, I'll mention, since you mentioned Deebo, he's my favorite NFL player who I didn't draft this year because what he did last year was an unsustainable business model. It doesn't make sense to use a receiver as a running back that much to expose him to the hits that he's going to get exposed to. He didn't want to do it himself. I don't blame him. Wonderful player. Drafted early in the second round, none for me. And speaking of...
And by the way, a risk that if he wants to not play that way, and then he wants to be a traditional receiver, well, he doesn't have a long track record of being a great traditional receiver. He has,
in the second half last year, Brandon Ayuk had better receiving numbers. I don't think a lot of people realize that. I'm not saying Ayuk's better than Deebo.
No, I know what you're saying.
Player. But the point is, he was a hybrid last year in a not sustainable way. And you got to be careful with these hits. I watched this Buffalo game last night, and the Bills are in control of the game, and they're running read option with Josh Allen. I'm thinking, what are you doing? He's the one guy you can't replace. You're screwed if Josh Allen gets hurt, and you have a really good team that could go to the Super Bowl, and you're telling me you want him to get hit in a game where you're already ahead by 14 points, and he's basically run off the clock time. Sometimes these coaches get too cute for their own good. Now, with Allen, I get it. He's a competitor. You put him out there, he's just the instincts are going to take over. They're going to want to run for the extra yards. They're going to want to take on the contact, but they need to be smarter, man. You can't, in a game that's already salted away, why expose your franchise, your one irreplaceable guy to that extra contact? I just don't understand it.
All right, you guys, let's go. We're going to get your fantasy questions now. Send it in on the YouTube chat board there. You can send it in on the text line at 855-912-1056. And you can also send it in on our Twitter page at Big O Show. All right, who should I start in a PPR flex position 10-team PPR league? Juju Smith, Miko Hardiman, or Chase Claypool? Pat Mahomes is the QB.
Yeah, it has to be Juju. I think Hardman's just going to be a specialty player. And we're worried that Chase Claypool may have been passed on the pecking order by George Pickens, who had a very explosive summer, I should say, for the Steelers. How do the Steelers do this? Everybody else has trouble drafting, and the Steelers find these interesting receivers outside of the first round time and time again. And maybe Pickens won't explode until you...
I don't know, but if I'm Belichick, I would find out who's the dude that picks receivers for Pittsburgh and pay him 10 times what he makes there and say, listen, all I want you to do every year is draft me a receiver because I can't find one for my life If I depended on it, I'd be dead in the water. I mean, that you just were talking about the Patriot receivers, and then when you mentioned Cedric Wilson, I was going, the Patriot receivers are maybe at the level of Cedric Wilson or under. That's the best that they can get. They don't have anything like Waddle and Tyreek. So that tells you right there. Belichick is one dude that needs whoever it is in Pittsburgh that knows how to find receivers, bro.
Oh, man. A lot of people in the league do, but certainly Belichick. And the one year that they finally spent a first-round pick on a receiver, because remember, they took Terry Glenn in the 90s, and then they didn't take a first-round receiver for 2 decades. And then they take the plunge on N'Keal Harry when they could have had Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. I go on and on. I mean, there are all these hits in that draft.
Chad Jackson. Harry. Remember, they took Chad Jackson in the first round. Sure. I mean, they have screwed up so much at wide receiver on that team. It's amazing. Think about it. Edelman was a quarterback that they converted.
Right. Yeah, they love their former quarterbacks. Mohamed Sanu was on the team for a while. Former quarterback Jacoby Myers for a while.
Trey Brown came out of
defensive back.
Yeah, dude, and it's
underrated Patriot. Maybe should have been the MVP of their first Super Bowl win. Myers for a while had more touchdown throws than touchdown catches. Back to the reader question. Juju's a tough guy to call, but he's going to command the targets in the middle of the field. I think he's probably looking at maybe a 70, 75 catch season, 950 yards, something like 6, 7 touchdowns. I think he'll have a good season. I don't think he'll be a star by any means, but of the 3 guys that the listener had on his roster, Juju was certainly the preference. I would give Juju a few weeks and see how he runs with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
All right, Tony Zagala says pick 1, Ertz, Devonta Smith, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Man, if Ertz were healthy, I'd be tempted to go there. Devonta Smith's going to be tricky because they have A.J. Brown, could be a target monster. Dallas Goedert was the most efficient tight end on a per-target basis last year. Smith's going to have a lot of those boom-bust games. There's going to be weeks he has 13 yards, and there's going to be weeks he hits the home run. Now, there's a guy who's going to be running the deep clear-out routes. But because Ertz isn't healthy, and because Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they don't trust him so much, they kept like 17 running backs there. They have Pacheco, they have Ronald Jones, they have Jerick McKinnon. Maybe he'll do something interesting with a third-down role. So it's a weak vote to Devonta Smith. Just understand he's going to be a peaks and valley type of receiver.
Jason Myers, standard league. Should I start AJ Green, Tony, Josh Palmer, or Tolbert? 3 wide receiver league.
Josh Palmer is my favorite, by far, my favorite wide receiver 3 in the league. Because if anything happens to Allen, anything happens to Mike Williams, it's wheels up. Justin Herbert is 1 or 2 on just about everybody's quarterback board right now. I don't know how many targets maybe Palmer gets if everybody's healthy, but I think he's going to be on the field enough that he'd be the preference in this question. But a lot of you out there probably can pick up Palmer and stash him on your bench. Maybe you wouldn't use him in week 1. We generally think of your bench as the running back handcuffs, the running back lottery tickets, and that's perfectly plausible. I want you to have a lot of those, but try to find some room for Josh Palmer, because if somebody gets hurt in front of him, this guy could be a top 25 receiver.
Mahomes or Rodgers?
It's going to be Mahomes. Who's Aaron Rodgers throwing to? Devontae Adams is gone. I mean, we're hoping that Sammy Watkins, Sammy Watkins' season is usually week 1, and then he fades into obscurity. Watkins is on this team. Cobb's on this team. A couple of rookies who haven't proven anything. Rodgers has already called those guys out. This Green Bay offense is going to be about Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and I know Minnesota's defense is a little shaky. I really like Minnesota's offense. Kevin O'Connell, they get a remodel at the right time. Rodgers is a wizard, but you got to have some help downfield, and I just don't see it right now. We're not even sure if Alan Lazard's going to play in week 1. Mahomes would be my weekly start. I wouldn't even think about that. Okay.
By the way, Sage also had a question. Should I trade T. Higgins for Waddle?
I mean, it's they're pretty close.
I know. It's 2 loaded receiving cores.
In a PPR format, I'd probably prefer Waddle because we know how they use him. I think he can get 100 catches. I don't think T. Higgins can, but they're really close. They went probably 3 or 4 picks apart in just about every one of my drafts. So it's really dealer's choice. I don't have a strong preference.
Okay. Next up is, let me see where we at here. Wait a minute. Here we go. Fantasy question. What to do with Cam Akers? Eddie Lepp is asking.
You have to keep him on your bench and hope it gets better. Running backs off Achilles injuries just don't have great track records. And you could see the Rams were not comfortable with Akers last night. They hardly played him. Darrell Henderson's a good player. Not a great player. Darrell Henderson isn't going to go to the moon and just shove Akers out of the way, but this is going to be a platoon all season. and it's probably just an ordinary offensive line. You can't cut them, you can't drop them, you can't trade Akers cheap. You just get to kind of put them on your bench and hope things get better in the next few weeks. Be patient here, but I wouldn't start them in week 2.
Okay. All right. If you guys want to send in your fantasy questions, send them in right now on the chat board. Should I start Breece Hall or Raymond Stevenson? Frankie Fresco is asking.
Yeah, Stevenson's interesting because he's the one running back the Patriots have who could maybe have a 50-catch season. Remember, James White retired. They didn't throw the ball to Harris last year. Hall eventually is going to be somebody you can trust for fantasy, but right now Michael Carter looks like the starter, and they're playing the Ravens in week 1. That could be a blowout, and that probably fits into Carter falling.
How do you? Let me ask you philosophically now.
Yep.
Because this is a question I wanted to ask you. How much does the quarterback change your mind about running backs and wide receivers? And I get it. Maybe we have to take it by a case by case basis because sometimes a team has a really good line and they can run the ball no matter what, and that's cool. But the quarterback affects your offense so much.
Absolutely.
And so when we're talking about the Jets, man, I don't know what the hell to expect out of that quarterback position. And I like Michael Carter because, hell, I wanted him for the Dolphins. But I think he can be a number 1 back, and they love him over there. But wait a minute, if the quarterback isn't scaring you whatsoever, well, then let me just stack the box and make Michael Carter's day hell and force Flacco or whenever the kid comes back, hey, you're going to have to beat us with your arm overall. So how do you look at fantasy situations when there's an unknown at quarterback?
No, it's a great question. I mean, the point is, and this is basically what you were saying, the quarterback
Carolina, New Orleans, the Jets. I mean, you start bouncing around, you got to worry about, how's that, Houston, how's that quarterback position going to trickle down to Seattle, the rest of the
for sure. For sure, I was going to mention them too. I'm hoping Davis Mills is good enough in Houston so I can play Dameon Pierce or Nico Collins or Brandon Cooks with some level of competence. The quarterback is the connective tissue with everything else, and especially when you pick a running back, whether you draft him, you pick him up on waivers, you start him. You're making a bet on how do I feel about this team? What type of game am I expecting? What's the game script going to be like? Are they going to be ahead? Are they going to be behind? Are they going to be running the ball late? Are they going to be playing hurry up late, throwing the ball late? Does he play on third downs? Does he catch the ball? The quarterback is a connective tissue to every other. You need to have an opinion on every quarterback in every city because that will affect, even if you're not going to draft that player. If you want to draft Terry McLaurin, you have to have an opinion on Carson Wentz. Is he better than the quarterbacks they've had in the past? One reason I like Michael Pittman so much in Indianapolis is I think Matt Ryan's an upgrade for them, albeit at the end of his career. And so that makes Michael Pittman interesting to me, or maybe even Mo Alley Cox in a late round as a backup tight end or something like that. So you asked the right question. You have to have an opinion on the quarterback. Now, here's the crazy thing, Big O, and you're going to laugh at me. I think Zach Wilson's so lost right now and so inexperienced. I actually think the Jets might be a little bit better off with Joe Flacco right now. Not great.
No, you're right. You're right.
Maybe he's the short-term answer.
He understands the game and the league. I think I'm with you. I think Zach Wilson's a disaster waiting to happen by putting him out there. I don't think he's close to even being ready. I think he's better at banging, older broads than he is playing football at this point in time.
No fantasy points for that, unfortunately, but yeah, at
least there are fantasies being played.
Yes, at least Joe Flacco's seen everything, right? He's seen every blitz. He's seen every pre-snap indicator. Can he still make all the throws? I don't know about that. And it's a shame because we want to draft Elijah Moore. We want to draft these running backs. Corey Davis has some value. Garrett Wilson, their first-round receiver, Ohio State, what a factory they are for receivers. But you have to ask yourself, again, any team you're thinking of investing in, you have to ask yourself first, even if it's not about the quarterback, how confident am I in this offense? And that's a quarterback question.
All right. Here's a question that quarterback affects it. Razzle Dazzle Crypto's asking, should I start Saquon Barkley or I know your answer, Chase Edmonds?
I'm probably the low man on Barkley, but the thing with him is the Giants have nothing else. I mean, their number 2 running back is Matt Breida. You guys know all about Breida. He's not a bad player, but he's miscast as a starter. Right. So Barkley has 15 to 20 touches already in his pocket. That's such a currency for fantasy. I can't look past that. Excuse me.
You good? Oh, no. He might have hit the mute. Can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we got
I'm
you. Go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, my microphone unplugs sometimes. Yeah, Barkley, because he has a safer path to 15 or 20 touches. I don't know what I'm getting into with the Giants. Man, talk about an ugly receiver room right now. I have no idea who Daniel Jones is throwing to, but
Yeah.
Barkley has the safer path to touches. I have to respect that.
Yeah, because I look at that combination and it's like that's a scary combination there. All right. Week 1, 0.5 PPR. Gibson, Zeke at running back.
Again, look, Zeke, his career arc makes me nervous. Tony Pollard was such a more efficient player last year, but they paid Zeke and they're going to play to that contract. And all Washington told us all summer is how they were down on Gibson. Now, unfortunately, the news of Brian Robinson getting shot, what a horrible story. I hope he makes a full recovery. He may play some football this year. We're just happy the guy's alive. But
Yeah.
Dallas believes in Zeke. Washington doesn't believe in Antonio Gibson. We have to respect that.
Okay. Matthew Correa is asking, who do I start, Damian Pierce or Miles Sanders in a full point PPR?
Love what I saw from Pierce. And, even though Houston's not a good team, Mills wasn't bad last year. Mills was a 5-star recruit coming out of Stanford, and he was the second best rookie quarterback last year. I realize it was a bad class, but I think they can at least be competent on offense. Miles Sanders, 0 touchdowns. He plays on an offense with other backs who will play, with a quarterback who runs. Whenever they score a running touchdown, you think, oh, it's probably Hurts again. Miles Sanders is a pretty good football player. He's not that valuable in fantasy right now. I'm rolling with Damian Pierce. I drafted him proactively. I think he's going to have a nice season.
All right. Remember, you can follow him on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski. Let's see. What else do we have here? What are your thoughts on David Mont?
Yeah, man, probably the worst offensive line in football. And he's in his final year of his first deal. We don't know if he'll get a second contract. I do think he's going to get a lot of volume, and that's half the game, or maybe even 3/4 of the game at running back. But it's going to be a lot of 2-yard runs. It's going to be ugly. I have a fair amount of Darnell Mooney. I have a fair amount of Cole Kmet, one of my favorite tight ends, because he got the volume last year, didn't get the touchdowns. Jimmy Graham's gone. Cole Kmet's going to get touchdowns this year. I even think that Fields is interesting because he's going to run, maybe for his life at times, but he's probably going to run for 700 or 800 yards. Montgomery would be, I'd take him when the rest of the room kind of shrugged and didn't want him, 5th round, 6th round. I didn't draft him proactively, but because he's already got maybe 250 touches in his back pocket, that keeps him somewhere in that running back 20 to 22 range.
Okay. Final question. Jason Myers is asking, half point PPR, Melvin Gordon, Michael Carter, Mooney, or Mike Davis for 1 week only.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be probably 1 week only for Mike Davis, but I'm going to go with Mooney because I think he has 8 to 10 targets already in his back pocket. I know the Niners have a very good defense. That's why they almost made the Super Bowl last year. But when you see the competition he has, I dare anybody out there to name any other Chicago wide receiver. That's how bad that wide receiver room is. Now, it means Mooney's going to get extra attention too, but I think he's good enough to beat it. I think he's headed for 1,100 yards and maybe 8 touchdowns. I'd play him confidently in week 1.
I like it. All right. Follow him on Twitter at Scott_Pianowski. Scott, what are you working on at Yahoo Sports? So our listeners can go over to Yahoo Sports and check it out and get an edge there.
Yeah, I posted my picks, my throwing darts, my 5 picks. One of them was Miami, the first pick I listed. So make yourself a little money and take the Dolphins. We have Fantasy Football Live at noon on Sunday. It's a video show. It's also a show on Twitter. You can get me at Yahoo Fantasy. I'll be answering questions there. And then all during the week, we have the podcast, we have pickups, we have game previews, we have sleepers, I do a sleeper piece every week, we have busts, we have all the stuff you need to get ready for your fantasy week 2. But hey, let's start off strong. It's great to be back with you. Again, I'd like the Dolphins to come out strong and beat New England. I can see a really fun year down there. I think they could challenge for a playoff spot. Buffalo may be hard to beat, but Miami certainly got the arrow pointed up. I think New England may have a losing record. When's the last time we felt that way about the Patriots? But
yeah. I like Miami this week big time, man. And, I know it's a homer point of view, I guess, that's the way. But I see a lot. I was talking about this on the show that it's not just us here in the Dolphin Nation. There's a lot of people in the periphery. And when Vegas is now, it's up to 3.5. And that tells you the money's coming in. Other people are liking what the Dolphins did. And that, if you look at it, it kind of makes a lot of sense. Philosophically, you look at what it made football sense what they did. You know what I mean? And that's why I think a lot of people like what's going on here.
And New England hates this trip. New England has a very poor record in Miami. Even And what was just a couple of years ago when New England this was a game in New England, they needed to win to get the seed locked up, and 17-point underdog Ryan Fitzpatrick beat them. And this is the team that the Patriots do not match up well against and play well against for whatever reason. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about Miami this weekend. It's going to be a fun season. You get Tyreek Hill, it's going to be fun. You get Chase Edmonds, it's going to be fun. The key is Tua. And I hate to sound wishy-washy on Tua.
True.
I just think there's a wide range of outcomes for him. I liked him at Alabama. I think he's a good kid. I think he works his tail off. And we're going to find out, man. And it's just fun. It's fun to have new stuff. It's fun to have an upside. Again, I think the upside of this team is it could easily be a playoff team. So let's get going, man. Wheels up, fins up.
I'm so pumped, and I'm grateful to the people at Sports Grill for making this happen and helping us and supporting us. And we support them because this is year-round fantasy football zone here with Andy Behrens on Monday and Scott Pianowski on Fridays. And now we're doing it video, and now we're doing it year-round. So we've taken it to another level. Scott, thank you, my brother. Great to have you back. Have a fantastic weekend, man. Really appreciate you.
Great to be back, Big O. Good luck in week 1, and we'll talk in a few days.
You got it. There you go. Scott Pianowski, man. Remember, noon, Mondays and Fridays. Andy Behrens and Scott Pianowski, both from Yahoo Sports, both entering our fantasy football zone. And don't forget, all football season long. All right, football specials at Sports Grill. $1.50 Bud Light drafts and bottles during NCAA and NFL games. They've got new cocktails that are only $5 during the NCAA and NFL games. Cherry lemonade, tailgate tea, $12 domestic pitchers. Yeah, baby, bone-in wings are now 15% off. They've got new menu items. The buttermilk chicken sandwich is delicious. They've got the buffalo tater tots. They've got hot sauces that are available to take home. You know the Sports Grill sauce. Those special grilled wing sauces are out of this world. Well, you can get the buffalo sauce, the Miami Heat, the blackberry, the Dale. They've got all kinds, man. And the Doral location is coming soon. Check it out. Mondays, $7 single smash burger. Tuesdays, $2 tacos. And Wednesdays, kids eat free with the purchase of an adult entry. Sports Grill, baby. Good food, good friends, good fun. And this
is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.